And our last speaker, our last speaker is Jackie Sullivan, who will talk to us a little bit more about her work in consulting. So Jackie graduated in economics from USU and has been involved in the honors program. She was a co-president in Huntsman Scholars and was involved as an undergraduate research fellow. I got to meet Jackie when she was the Huntsman Scholar co-president, and she's one of the kindest people I've met and very humble. She's done this whole slew of incredible things and still will just like answer your call whenever you need some sort of help. So she's really great. I'm grateful to know Jackie. And after graduating from USU, she went on to do some incredible things. She went to Oxford and got a master's degree in economics for development. And after that, she worked as an economic advisor for the Ethiopian Agriculture Transfer. I wrote it down wrong. Something in Ethiopia, where it sounds pretty incredible. So she worked in Ethiopia, and now she's back here working as an analyst for the consulting firm Cicero. And after that, she has been, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but she's been accepted to Harvard and will go after this year. She can explain more about that. But yeah, Jackie's great, and she'll talk to us a little bit more about consulting. So drop questions in the chat or raise your hand when we're done.
All right, so Maddie definitely gave me way too kind of an introduction. Let me share my screen. I just have a couple of slides. I know that it's been quite a long day, so I'm happy to talk briefly about just the high level things that I did and how my economics background was helpful. Just to check, everyone can see my screen, all right?
Yeah, right. Looks good.
But yeah, I'll go over just the high level stuff of my background, and then we can answer questions and I can talk in more detail about anything that's interesting or helpful. So without further ado, my background, I'm from Bountiful, Utah, born and raised, super unexciting. But I graduated from Woods Cross High in 2014. Ended up coming to Utah State. I had no intention of ever going to Utah State, and that's not because Utah State isn't the best school ever. It's just because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. At the time, I thought I wanted to study medicine, and as you can see, I ended up graduating in economics. And after I did that, I went on and did a master's in development economics because development was something that was really interesting to me for several reasons, and this was like a great program to launch into a career into that space. So my work has been varied, but I'm gonna try to make an argument that they're semi-related and that economics was helpful for both for various reasons and also very similar reasons. So right after I graduated from my master's, I went and worked in Ethiopia for the Ethiopian government as an economist, but more practically in a more consultant type role. So the type of work that we did there was that we worked with big agricultural businesses that were trying to improve their business. They were trying to sell more product abroad. They were facing operations issues. They were facing financial issues. They were trying to get loans for the bank, a whole spectrum of things. Very similar to what I do now as a consultant, just here in Salt Lake. Context is very, very different, and the solutions are very, very different, but the processes are the same. So right now, as a consultant, we work with a whole variety of clients. I tend to work with a lot of our social impact clients because of my background, but it's really a similar process. And Haley did a great job explaining what they do at EY. And what she said was true. Consulting is so varied that you could pull a bunch of different consultants, and not only are you going to get different answers based off the firm that you're at, you're also going to get different answers based off of, what kind of projects people are staffed on and what backgrounds they have and what sub-industries they end up working in. But just as a high-level overview of the two industries, international development covers a whole spectrum of things, and so does consulting. But at the highest level, international development works on promoting equality, economic growth, job creation, higher incomes, and better living conditions. People always think of low-income countries with international development, and that's true. If you want to take a broader lens and just think about economic development in general, you could make the argument that there's a lot of economic development needed in Utah, and there's a lot of local contexts where the same skill set is important. But if we're going to expand our scope to international development, there's a whole range of jobs. So economists, similar to the type of role I was in, consultants, public health professionals, statisticians, policymakers, donors, NGOs. It's a whole ecosystem. Then consulting, also a whole ecosystem. But this is my personal definition that I put together that says everything and nothing all in the same sentence. But it's just organizations and people that provide expertise and support to other organizations and people across every industry with the ultimate goal of solving problems. And the problems are really specific to the type of client you're working for, and really can be whatever. So I'll give you some examples of our clients that we typically work with here in Salt Lake. If you have a large company, this could be something like, hey, we want to update our customer segmentation, which is a whole project. And then we want to just roll this out throughout our whole nationwide company. That's a whole nother project. You talk about small companies, this could be something like, we want to better understand what our customers are in our branding. We want to better understand what products we should offer and what the market demands. Talk about governments. We want to think about how we do our workers' compensation programs better. We want to think about economic development in a more smart, data-driven way. NGOs, we want to target our donors differently. We want to know how we can optimize our message to get the most donations, and so on and so on. So big takeaway for both these industries, huge spectrum, also very interesting work in both, and really similar processes. So one thing about economics that I think is smart and really helpful in so many contexts, and especially these contexts, is that econ itself is also very broad and can be applied in a lot of different subspecialties. As you've seen from like the diversity of the speakers that have come, we have people in law, we have people in consulting, we have people in sales. There's a whole range of things you can do with econ. More specifically to what I've done, the things that my economics background's helped, in international development, it was helpful for understanding the context. In Ethiopia, the macro situation, it colors everything. So every business suggestion and advice that we'd give, we have to consider the macro realities, meaning in Ethiopia, you can't just tell businesses to import more because there's a foreign currency shortage, which is a macro problem. One thing that is shared both between consulting and international development work is the ability to collect and analyze data. So in school, you learn a lot about theories, and I remember sitting in a lot of my econ classes thinking, great, I'm going through these micro models and the macro models and we can do the math, but how does an actual person in an actual organization ever use this? And I never felt like I got a great answer until I started work. And my take on it is that macro, micro econometrics models are really helpful in framing the way you think about things. And they provide a quantitative framework that you can apply. But the way that you take that theory and put it into action is to collect and analyze data. And that requires a good quantitative background in economics, or stats, or math. But econ has the benefit of having both like a quantitative tool set and also a type of social, a type of the understanding of the humanities and like the actual realities of day-to-day life that stats and math alone don't provide. So after you analyze and collect all that data, you can create action from the data. And that's the same that we do in consulting. So that was a really speedy, high-level summary of a lot of things. I would like to just open it up for specific questions, and they don't need to be huge details. I'm happy to go back on some of these slides and add more details to things that I skimmed over, but please don't be afraid to ask any questions. I'm more than happy to help. And this is my email. One thing that Maddie said that again was way too nice, but I hope is true. I'm always happy to help Aggies, and if there's anything I can do to like answer questions or provide advice or just be a sounding board on, I'm always happy to. But let me, I'll stop this screen share for now, and then we'll open it up for questions, and I'll pull up the deck if we need to. All right, so I have one in the chat. When would you recommend a student go to grad school? Great question. It depends on the type of grad school and your goals. So I went right after Utah State, and that was because it made sense for the type of job that I was interested in, and it made sense for what I was trying to do. So at the time, I was maybe thinking about doing a PhD. A PhD is a big commitment, and I didn't want to do that without testing the waters, which was a great idea because I found out in my master's program that I'd never, ever, ever want to do a PhD. So that was one part of it. I would say that there are certain industries that make sense to go immediately, and there's other industries that don't. So something like law, you can go immediately after your undergrad, and that works great. There's not this expectation that you get a whole bunch of work experience before you do that, even though it's helpful. Something like business school, you need to wait 2 to 4 years at minimum. You could be the smartest person in the world, and really no top business school will take you, at least like starting immediately, just straight out of undergrad, because that experience is so helpful. So it's helpful. Like what I would advise is find people that have done grad programs that you're interested in and like ask them about their paths. Or if you don't know anybody, hop on LinkedIn. It's the best democratizing tool of everyone's resume. You can honestly get so much information so fast. So that's what I would suggest.
Jackie, I also had a question. I'm wondering, so you've been in a lot of different places. Have you stayed in touch with people from different jobs or from USU? And do you have any, like, I guess my question, have you stayed in touch with professors or kind of kept up contact with people? And has that helped you at all?
Yeah. Have some friends on this call. I know I've talked to Paul a handful of times since I've been home. Madeline is also a great friend. Talk to her regularly, and a lot of other professors from Utah State that I have good friendships and connections with. I'd say that to the networking question that came up in the previous group, networking sounds really like grimy and gross. At least it did for me for the longest time. I think networking is pretty organic as long as you're a decent person. And it kind of ties into this question. So a lot of my friends from grad school and even like friends I had in Ethiopia, I keep in regular contact with them. Maybe it goes like a month or two since the time zones are so different. But there's been a handful of times in the past 2 years where I've connected people that I met in grad school to people I knew from Utah State because they were applying to the same program. And it wasn't because this person was trying to network me, but it was because they were a good friend of mine and I was trying to help them out. And I've had that favor returned to me so many times. So I would say take a look at your peers, be mindful about like the extracurriculars that you're in. Try to be with people that are like-minded and get to know them and keep up those relationships. Because I mean, ultimately, that's probably the most important thing, both for your life, your personal life, and your career. So short answer, yes, I keep up with them. Second, longer answer, it's also so helpful for like career and personal development too.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you so much, Jackie. And if anybody has more questions for Jackie, her email's there.